Introducing the new YouTube analytic for artists.
Oh man. Okay, well, that was just so good. I know I said I was going to stop after 5 minutes, but I couldn't.
That's all right.
Sounded so good. Hi, Taylor. Taylor Hatch is here. I'm
Oh,
sure
hey,
you
Taylor.
know him. Loves you. Oh, he already has three questions for you.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but first,
Yes.
okay, let me see. Let me get my stuff together here. Where is did I close that? Um, yeah, sorry, I just gotta get this one new window. I gotta get my Restream up because that shows me YouTube comments if there are comments.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so um, I do like to have that chat. Yeah, because yeah, they can be different. Anyway, here we are. My guest is, I don't say your last name enough, so I'm going to try. Kevin Van Den Elzen. Did I say that good?
Yes.
It's such a hard name, Kevin.
Yeah, I know. I have my parents to thank for that. Luckily,
Okay,
they
so
gave me they gave me a good first name, so you know.
yeah, Kevin. That's a great
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, one of my favorite minions, so, they liked the name too, They
Yeah, yeah,
probably
yeah, yeah.
stole it from you. Kevin. I mean, it's just a friendly name.
Yeah.
So you just heard Kevin playing with really wonderful group. Anthony Wilson, probably one of my favorite guitar players on the planet,
Same.
and Gerald Clayton, an incredible pianist who has an amazing history of music in his playing, and then he's modern too. It's really beautiful to listen to him.
Yeah.
Jermaine Paul, I just so impressed with him. He's
Hmm.
such a great player. He's so musical and solid and
Yeah.
swings. He's so good.
Yeah. And I think at that time he was 21. He's super young. So
Wow.
that means now that he is, I think maybe 23 or 24. But yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Is he from Los Angeles?
Yeah, born and raised actually.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't
Yeah.
realize he was so young because he's a big guy.
He's a big guy and he plays super mature. So,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that was that video is from like a couple years ago now. I think maybe 2 years ago, and that was around right around the time when I start to hear his name around the scene, and people go like, "Have you heard about this guy Jermaine?" A good friend of mine, Adam Hirsch, he's a great piano player. Adam was telling me about Jermaine because Jermaine went to Northridge, where Adam also
Oh,
went to school. Um, so he was talking to me about him, and then that's actually the first time. That's the first concert that we've played together. Like
oh wow.
we met a little before that, I think, but that was the very first time that we met actually the night before because we went to go check out Anthony on the previous night at Sanford where he was playing with John Clayton and Jeff Hamilton. And then the second night, JC and Jeff couldn't make it, so he got Jermaine and I to play. So
Wow.
we went out there to do our homework and try to play a little bit like those two guys.
That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and your playing is so clean and solid and artistic. Um, really nice. You know, I wanted to ask you a few questions too. Well, regarding your playing and in that situation, I mean, I know you played, other situations, but
Mhm.
so one thing I was really noticing because your playing is so clean, there's like space around the notes, which is great. And I noticed that your not time, your um, I don't know how else to put it, but your emphasis, on the one or the two, changed. And like throughout, like sometimes you were emphasizing the one, sometimes you were emphasizing the two.
Mhm.
And first of all, it made me kind of laugh because my history, is in Japan. I've been going to Japan for years, and I
Yeah.
remember years ago when drummers they were getting good, and they were good, except that they would play these great grooves for about no more than 8 bars and then change. And it drove me crazy. It was like, what are you doing? Just stay there, and
Mhm.
but so the first thing when I was listening to your playing, I was laughing because you could barely tell, if you weren't paying attention to that, it's just real clean and beautiful and swinging and solid. But if you're paying attention, it's like, oh, okay, he's changing. So I think I wanted to ask you about, there's obviously an art to playing with a bass player in that situation. I don't mean when the rest of the band's playing, when you and the bass player are playing, you're supporting the bassist. I don't think I've ever really asked a drummer this question, so I'm curious, is there a school of thought or is it a personal thing or you know what I mean? Accompanying a bass player in that?
Accompanying a bass player? Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting question that you're asking, and thank you for the sweet comments. That's much appreciated. Um, it's interesting because we were just talking about John Clayton, and John is very near and dear to my heart because uh, him and Jeff Hamilton are the reason why I'm pretty much living in LA now for almost 9 years. And I heard John speak about this exact thing once with that he had Jeff with him, and the time before that one of the first time that I actually met John, he had John Riley, the drummer from New York, with him, and we were all like sitting together in this like auditorium at my alma mater in Amsterdam, and he said, "Okay, everybody, like I'm gonna count you guys off, and I want you guys to clap on beat one." It goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, clap, and you hear this entire group not just as one clap, but you hear like plop. It's not just like one single like solid clap altogether. And he said everybody in this room has a different time feel. And once we're playing together, all those different time fields have to kind of like merge together in order to make it work. So for me as a drummer, when I play when I play with John Clayton, or when I play with Jermaine, or when I play with Chuck Berghofer, or when I play with some of my buddies like Eric Sittner, who plays with Josh Nelson and I, or um, uh, who's another bass player that I play pretty regularly with, like somebody like Frank Ojeda or some. They all have their different time feels, and to me, I have to adjust to that, because if I'm going to play like way in front of the beat, like what JC does, like what Ray Brown also did, then the time will actually rush. So I have to hang a little back in there so that the pulse stays the same and that the time doesn't rush or drag. Um, and then a different thing happens with Jermaine, because Jermaine is a little bit more centered, so I can also be a little bit more in the center. And then there are other bass players who are a little bit more on the back of the beat, so that I actually have to push a little bit more. And I believe that it's my responsibility to do that and to adapt to their time feel and to their pulse. And that, that kind of takes a little bit of it takes a little bit of effort from my part, because when I play for the first time with a bass player who I don't know, that just means to me that I have to like lay down the time and not go, crazy already from beat one, try to experiment and all of that, stuff. But just lay it down and kind of like feel it out, like what the lay of the land is, and then maybe after 8 bars, I feel, more confident, or 16 bars to feel that I feel more comfortable to start, taking it to places. But I mean, for me, my most important thing is to make the band sound and feel good. And I can do that together with a bass player, but I first have to meet the bass player somewhere in that,
Yeah.
ambiguous middle, so that it works and create a swing time feel.
What about supporting the bass player in his solo? Because
Uh,
like there's different things I've heard over the years, no playing, playing a little,
yeah,
playing colors, uh, you know.
yeah, and I've had conversations with different bass players about that topic too. And for example, I saw Jay Anderson about 2 weeks ago at the Hollywood Bowl, because he was playing with Maria Schneider's band, and it was big band night at the Hollywood Bowl, which was incredible, because it was three completely different bands: Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra, Count Basie band, and they blew my socks off because they sounded incredible. And then Marie Schneider's band, and I had that exact same conversation with Jay many years ago, also at my alma mater in Amsterdam, because he would show up there for his residency. And Jay would say that his number one pet peeve for drummers to do is when he takes a solo that drummers will lay out, because he wants to have that time. So Jay said, whatever you do with me, play time. Also when I play solos. Um, then there is a bass player from Holland who I know who likes exactly. Sorry, my phone is going off and Siri is listening. Don't do that. Um, uh, and then there's a bass player in Holland who wants to have those colors. Like he talked about this record with Jack DeJohnette and Kenny Wheeler. I think the record is called, or the tune is called GNU High, or the record is called GNU High. I'm not sure, but he liked um, that coloring that Jack DeJohnette does under a bass player. So it's also just personal preference, but usually what my go-to is that I'll, regardless of what the bass player wants, I'll play time, because they start to play a solo, and piano players and guitar players either will not accompany a bass player for like a number of bars, or they'll come in like at the bridge or whatnot, but they usually will create some space for the bass player to start, to start to play whatever they want to play, And then if I drop out, then there's nothing. And there's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing more uncomfortable to do to a bass player than to just lay out and that the bass player has nothing to play off of.
Yeah, yeah,
So regardless, I would just play time and
yeah,
feel it what the bass player wants. If the bass player has a really like solid sense of time, which bass players usually have, but somebody like Carl McComas Reichel,
yeah,
has such a deep sense of time that you can do whatever you want with this guy, and he will just stay where he's at. It
yeah,
doesn't matter if you play solos or if he plays a solo or if he's accompanying, it just will stay wherever it's at. And he can lay it down or he can go off and venture. But
yeah,
I think that and on that note, like I think it's a yin and yang between bass players. Like bass players can go out and experiment and that the drummer keeps it more closer to home, and then the vice versa, that a drummer can go and explore and that the bass player holds it more down. And that's kind of like the 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 cool interplay that bass players and drummers can have. But
yeah,
and then at the end of the and then the core of it is just listening to one another.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's something that I've noticed over the, million billion times over the years. Bill Marcus says, inform Kevin he played his ass off Saturday.
Oh, thank you.
Um, yeah, you were just making me think of one of my favorite examples of what we're talking about, which was with Kenny, what's his name? Um, Kenny, oh shit. He played with Jeff Tain Watts, Kenny Kirkland.
Kirkland?
Yeah. And Dave Carpenter. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I don't, anyway, this one night I saw them. It was a long time ago. I don't know how old I was. I was pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
And they were Catalinas. And yeah, I guess this was one of my personal musical lessons for myself. So I sat down and my feeling at first was I was very uncomfortable because Tane was like on the front of the beat, like
Mm-hmm.
always. And Kenny was on the back of the beat.
Mm.
And then finally I realized that Carpenter was friggin' holding it all together. He was
Mm-hmm.
he was right in the middle. And that really blew my head apart. It was great. It was really a great thing because I went through this process, like Jeff Tain Watts. It was like, what the hell is he doing? I was really uncomfortable. And then I started noticing, and it's like, oh wow, this is really good. But that kind of thing is you really have to open your ears and listen and
Yeah.
and see what's happening.
Yeah.
By the way, I love that composition. Wait, is that an old song?
The composition with Anthony?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Del Sasser
yeah.
by Sam Jones, and Carmen McRae wrote lyrics to that.
Okay.
Uh, um, if I never fall in love, damn it! And I just played it not that long ago. If you never fall in love with me or something in that vein,
I thought
maybe
I'd heard it sung.
yeah,
Yeah. It's a wonderful song.
yeah, it's super nice.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into at least one of Taylor's questions.
Yes.
I always kid him around because he asks such great questions.
He
Um,
does. He shows
yeah.
up at our live streams with Josh, but now the roles are reversed because now I'm in the hot seat for once instead of your seat. So it's a new feeling for me.
Okay, so he said, knowing your encyclopedic knowledge of West Coast jazz history, what story have you discovered recently that has fascinated you?
Woo, that's a good question.
I
Um,
always say that, Taylor.
yeah, yeah, but I mean, it truly is. Um, what is true? Something, I just heard something that, um, good God, I just heard a story not that long ago. Uh, it'll pop back in my mind, but like within the last couple of days, I've uh, uh, I've heard something. I mean, just in a general scope, whenever I get to hang with Terry Gibbs, then the stories are flying by, and they can be very insightful. They can be very funny. Um, well, and I'm lucky actually that I hang with some folks on a regular basis. Some older folks like Chuck Berghofer uh, and Joe LaBarbera and Peter Erskine that will drop some knowledge on me. Um, but I think like a funny story so I'll give you an insightful story and I'll give you a funny story. A funny story was that Terry told me that he was playing, I believe that it was somewhere in Vegas at some kind of stadium, and he played with a dream band. They had some kind of engagement for 2 weeks, and I love Jack Sheldon. Like Jack is he he's probably like one of the most um, recognizable West Coast musicians that has ever lived. Because when you hear that guy play trumpet, you know immediately like that's Jack Sheldon. And then his voice is also very recognizable, and then obviously his comedy. But really, like when I listen to a Henry Mancini record or to a Marty Page record with his big band, and Jack plays a solo, then I know immediately because of that, that airy, smoky sound that it's Jack. So Terry had Jack in his big band, and Jack wasn't a regular fixture in the Dream Band, but he had Jack with him. And apparently the wind was blowing a little bit that day. So what ended up happening was like they were starting to play, and Jack's music blew off the stage. And like he was apparently like following the chart that blew off of his stand, but he never stopped playing. So while he was trying to read the chart and catch the chart from the wind, he went off stage and he followed that chart like all across the stadium, but never stopped playing his part. So, like all of the guys from the Dream Band, they were looking at him like, "What is this guy doing in Lord's name?" And Terry was looking like, "Oh, geez, like this." But he never stopped playing.
That is so Jack Sheldon.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
What a character he was. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah, I don't know if you ever heard his records with Ross Tompkins, the pianist.
I haven't touched on those just yet. No.
They did a bunch of them, he was singing.
Yeah.
And Ross and I made a record together, and Ross was for his own records and actually for mine and for Jack's, he would go into the studio, play the song once, and that was it. Right? So he would do whole albums in like 2 hours. And so anyway, but their duos were amazing,
Mhm.
really artistic. I mean, you know, that kind of thing, doesn't happen so much anymore. Just like an amazing duo with a person singing who is such a great singer. I mean, he was kind of not overlooked exactly, but nobody really paid attention to his singing. And he was a great singer, really
Right.
great, technically and phrasing and everything.
Yeah, yeah. Now, and didn't he have a regular gig up in the valley somewhere, like the Money Tree or Moonlight Tango, where he would play with Ross Tompkins? Josh has
Um,
told me about that. That
yeah,
Jack had a steady.
well, the Money Tree they might have played at, or Alphonse's,
Yeah.
uh, or Moonlight Tango. I don't know. I'm not. I can't remember exactly because, gosh, there was so much happening. There was also the place near NBC. I should remember the name of that place, and I can't. But yeah, those were, it was the old days,
Mhm.
but they were doing that a lot. And then, of course, Jack played on Venice Beach.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, yeah. So
What
I
a
mean,
character.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I never got to, and I hit my head about this because when I moved to town, he was still, active, and he was playing at Catalina's, and this was already after he had a stroke, and then I heard, that he had to relearn how to play trumpet, but he was paralyzed on his right hand, so he learned how to play trumpet with his left, which was incredible. But I never went to Catalina's to go see him. The only thing that I actually uh, that was a touch of Jack was that Josh actually informed me about this memorial that was held at Catalina's when he passed, like maybe like a month and a half after he passed, and it was his big band that played, and there was an MC. I forgot the name of the gentleman who was MCing the night, but they were telling also some stories and some jokes from Jack, some jokes that wouldn't fly nowadays anymore. But everybody in the room was cracking up. But it was just a who's who of people and this was right before COVID. But
Yeah.
Bill Holman was there, Alan Bergman was there, and Alan Bergman came to say hello to Josh, and Josh was like, you're Alan Bergman, and Johnny Mandel was there, and Dick Nash was there. Uh, I don't think Nestico showed up for that one, and then everybody in the band was also stellar. It was Kubis and Wayne Bergeron, and Chuck was playing. Dave
Carl
Toll
Saunders,
sang,
probably.
Carl Saunders, yeah,
Yeah.
the whole shebang.
Yeah.
So that was just star-studded. And in the meantime, Willis Holman has just passed. Mendel is not around anymore, and well, Nestico has passed away as well in the meantime. So that was just a really really incredible evening of really great music, really great artistry, and I really got a sense of Jack's musicality and humor that evening, But I wish that I would have
Yeah.
hauled my ass over to Catalina's and see Jack play.
Yeah. When I first came here, I was 21 and I worked for a year and a half at Dante's.
Oh
And
yeah,
yeah, and so he and Ross played there
yeah.
too. A lot of people at that time, it was uh like a year or two before Dante's really started kind of uh, dissolving,
Hmm.
so there was still great happenings and great people playing. I think that's where I met Ross actually, and yeah, yeah, that was yeah, interesting, great times. But Jack, he was very supportive actually.
Hmm.
Strangely, I mean, I say strangely because he was kind of such a big star, he
Hmm.
was doing so many things and he was so in demand, but he was really sweet and very nice, very supportive.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I've heard.
Yeah. Um, okay, so let's see. I was thinking of something, but another Taylor question. In your practice, what are your favorite fundamental exercises that you continue to utilize for inspiration?
Hmm. Uh, well, I do. I practice timekeeping pretty much all the time. I practice different tempos that I don't feel comfortable with, um, like slow tempos, and I will, practice with a metronome. And I talk with my own students about this too. Um, it's fun. The metronome is actually a funny thing because you can actually rely too much on a metronome if you practice with it in not the wrong way, but like in a certain way. So what I try to do is that I always will put my metronome on half notes, either on 1 and 3, or I will put it on 2 and 4. And then because what happens is then you still have to make the time yourself. If you're putting the metronome on every quarter note, then you kind of can let the metronome do the work for you. But if you take 2 beats out of the equation, then you still have to, then you still, or at least the drummer has to still make the time for him or herself. So I do that, and in different tempos, and uh, I have something what I call a triplet pyramid, where I have different orchestrations that I do between the left hand on the snare drum, the right foot with the bass drum, and then the left foot on the hi hat, and go through like different orchestrations on how you can play triplets between those 3 voices, pretty much. Um, and so I do that, and I work on a lot of hand stuff. So that's like more snare drum oriented. I love to practice snare drum stuff, like classical snare drum etudes, in different kind of styles. Like, the classical French way of playing things is demands a lot of dynamical playing and a lot of subtle playing, and then American rudimentary playing requires a lot more stamina. So, I practice both of those on a daily basis to keep my hands strong. And after I'm done with that, I will practice my transcriptions, because I'm transcribing all the time. And like, I practice my Shelly Manne transcriptions that I've made, my Larry Bunker transcriptions, my like some John Guerin stuff that I've transcribed, and then try to create some ideas of my own with that. So that's pretty much like my steady practice routine, uh, from a day-to-day basis. I
Yeah.
just started practicing again because I kind of like, took a little break, and a couple days ago I started practicing again, and it felt great to just have a little break for yourself for like a week or two.
Yeah.
And then because I was still, playing, I was still doing gigs, and I was still teaching and all of that, but I took a little break from practicing, and then, a couple of days ago I went back into it, and it just felt great to go back into practice and, you know, work again, on a very steady basis.
Yeah. That's cool. I practice technique every day.
Ah,
I find it challenging to practice other stuff with just other pieces of life that are going on,
yeah.
And I try and fit in various things, and of course things that come up. Like I just the other day I did a Kenny Werner webinar, which was
Oh yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
He's so wonderful. I just love him. And I could listen to him all day play. I mean, he's just the kind of artist and pianist he is just, so totally what I'm into.
Yeah.
And but it was really interesting. It was about improvisation, and he said basically, um, you're there are 3 things to work on, and it's just to work on each, and just soak it in and then forget it, of course.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it was really interesting. One was uh, um, trying to my words are not happening. Arpeggios.
Yeah.
For some reason, arpeggios always escapes me. Arpeggios, chromatic,
Hmm.
and scale tones,
Yeah.
and that you're basically taking into consideration the next chord. So your line is going there. And so, it'll go to some kind of common tone, but using those three things in your lines. And that, you know, actually, it kind of acknowledged one thing for me that I always talk about to my students, trying to get them a little smarter, which is you have to expect, as a singer especially, you have to expect the next chord.
Hmm.
And if you don't, then you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. You're just
Yeah,
putting something out, and then what? You
yeah,
know?
right.
So you really, and it's actually magical, especially for improvisation. If you're focusing on like now and what's coming, it's beautiful what happens. Your
Hmm.
improvisation, if you have any chops at all, your improvisation works. And it's really great. And the more you
Yeah,
do it, of course, the better you get.
yeah,
But anyway, it was really fun. It was a 2 hour webinar.
that's great. Yeah, I should actually like try to attend one of those because I love Kenny as well.
Yeah, I probably can send you the link for what was happening.
Mm.
So yeah, but it's interesting knowing what you want to practice on, and you don't want to obsess over something, but you do want to kind of flow with the moment, right? And what's happening in the moment.
Yeah,
And of course, you have to do what you have to do. You have to work on, what you have to work on. But um, there's so many, there's so many things to work on,
yeah,
so many people to listen to. I mean, that's the other thing. I really like to listen to records, but it's hard because in the free time I have, I want to, I have to practice every day
yeah,
because my voice wants that,
yeah.
and and
I
then
feel this. I feel the same way. Like I feel the need to practice every day, but I also want to listen to my records. And I mean, it's I now have a pretty nice record collection, and I wherever I go, either I'm gigging down in San Diego, or a couple of weeks ago I was attending a wedding in Carpinteria, and I'm like just looking on my phone, like, oh, is there a record store somewhere in the neighborhood? And I'll just go buy a record or two, so so that's all Josh Nelson's fault, by the way.
I believe it.
Yeah.
um, let's see. Oh, so I wanted to ask you too, of course. Let's touch on your history. I like to talk about other stuff, in these, but I do like to know history too.
Yeah.
So obviously, big band is a big part of your life, but when you were coming up, you probably wanted to be a drummer forever. And so were you into big band specifically? Were you into all kinds of music? Did you decide along the way somewhere that out of all the jazz that you liked, that big band was like a big thing for you?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, big band was my introduction to jazz, actually. Um, so my dad used to be a drummer, and my dad is and my mom too. There was pretty much music around the house like all the time. My mom and dad are not professional musicians, but they are insane enthusiastic music lovers. Um, and that has resulted in the fact that I took all of the jazz and funk and Brazilian music in my interests and in my listening, and all of the rock and heavy metal and that kind of music went to my brother. So my brother and I are um, uh, we couldn't be more different from one another musically. We still love one another deeply, but on that front, we're complete opposites. Although, like I do enjoy some stuff that he listens to, and he actually came to a couple of jazz things that me and my dad went to. But my dad showed me. It was like around 8 years old that I remember that I first got. A couple recordings thrown at me that were big band recordings, and my drum teacher at the time showed me Buddy Rich with his big band, and I kind of was already like interested in large ensemble because there's a pretty decent tradition in my hometown of like wind ensemble and like brass bands, so that was already like pretty that was already like present before I heard jazz. Um, but yeah, my teacher showed me Buddy Rich and his big band, and then my dad showed me Sinatra. And one of the Sinatra records that I vividly remember that I heard for the first time, and I went like, "What in the Lord's name is that?" And it's Frank Sinatra at the Sands, which is still like one of my all-time favorite recordings, and one of the greatest recordings ever made, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Uh, so when I heard those two, and I can't really remember what the Buddy Rich recording was, but those two recordings were definitely like responsible for me diving into the big band stuff, and then a little later on, my dad brought a couple records home with him from the WDR big bands, which is a radio
Yeah.
big band based in Cologne, and probably like one of the top big bands in the world.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly remember which records they were. They were the WDR with Joe Zawinul and his band, and Vince Mendoza made all of the arrangements for that concert. And then the second record was the Brecker Brothers with the WDR, also with arrangements by Vince Mendoza, and the rest of the band were Jim Beard, Will Lee, and Peter Erskine on drums. And like, that was just this like little seed that was put into me, because that started my interest in and love for Vince Mendoza's music, but also for Peter's playing. And then years later, I get to study with Peter, so it's kind of like a
Yeah.
full circle thing, you know?
Yeah. Cool. So, and you came to LA 9 years ago, is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah. I moved out here in 2015, August 2015.
From Europe?
Yeah,
Yeah. You're not very old, but I have no idea how old you are.
I'm 32 now.
Yep, you're not very old.
Well, I was green as hell when I came out here. That's one thing for sure.
Well,
I thought that I knew something when I graduated my school in Amsterdam, and living in Amsterdam, because Amsterdam is a gorgeous city and it's super fun. Um, and then you think like, oh yeah, like living in a city like Amsterdam, because I'm pretty much like a country boy. I come from the small town in the from the rural side of the Netherlands. And then you think, that you've seen a bunch of things already in Amsterdam, and then you move to like a ginormous city like LA, and then you figure out very quickly, like, I don't know, I know shit, pretty much.
yeah. Did you like right away get into going around and seeing people and meeting people? Is that
Yeah, yeah.
hit the ground running kind of?
Yeah, because when I moved out, I had to start from scratch again, because I knew maybe five people that were living out here. It was fun. It was funny. Like a couple months before I moved out here, I met a couple guys who went to Cal State Northridge at the time, and I met Gary Pratt actually in Amsterdam, because there was this competition that the conservatory in Amsterdam would host, and it was an international jazz competition where like a couple bands from different European schools, and then a couple American bands would all come to Amsterdam, and they would have workshops and master classes during that entire week, and then at the end of the week there would be the actual competition at a concert venue called the BIM House in Amsterdam, which is this phenomenal stage. And that's where I met Adam Hirsch and Shai Golan and guitar player Victor Sampedro. I think it was Evan Waltmeyer who was on tenor sax on that trip, and Andy McCauley on bass. And then I kept in touch with Adam Hirsch, and when I moved out here, I crashed with Adam for like the first couple nights, because I didn't have an apartment just yet. So that was just a pure
Wow. Yeah.
coincidence that all happened. But those were the guys that I knew, and when I moved out here, I knew for a fact that I just had to go around and discover where the musician hangs were and the sessions and all that stuff. And I heard very quickly about the Blue Whale, and within my first week of moving out here, I visited the Whale, went to go see a show there. Peter was very kind in that week to bring me over. That was pretty incredible. Actually, the first week that I moved out here was also at the same time one of the most incredible weeks that I experienced in LA, because Peter was rehearsing for the Jaco Pastorius tribute concert that they did a number of years ago at the Bowl, which was this all-star big band that Vince Mendoza put together with, like, Mintzer was in it, Bob Sheppard played, Andy Martin, Bill Reichenbach, Chuck Findlay, Wayne Bergeron, Gary Grant, who just passed away. But then the rhythm section was Herbie, John Beasley, Will Lee, Peter Erskine, Alex Acuna, Manolo Badrena, and then Wayne Shorter showed up as a guest soloist, and then a number of different bass players like what's his name, Trujillo, the bass player for Metallica, was there, and then Felix Pastorius, Jaco's son, was there, and I just showed up at this rehearsal that they did where they all played, Jaco tunes, and I stepped in. There was this guard, and he said, like, "Oh, are you Kevin?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go on in. We're expecting you." And I just walk into the big auditorium at the Musicians Union that was on Vine, and I see Herbie right there, and I see Wayne right there, and Peter's like, signaling me over, and I sit behind Peter, and there was just something in the air when Wayne, because there was this one tune or two tunes where Wayne and Herbie played together, and they started it off together, and like my hairs went like what, like that. There was something tangible in the air in that room there, which I've only experienced maybe just a handful of times, where you just see those kind of improvisers all together and that they create just beauty.
Yeah.
And it's right then and there, and then it's gone. But you're
Yeah.
like, holy shit, what was that just now? Wayne just played one note and it was like,
Yeah.
there was, I can't really express it into words, but it was just as if that was just really special. And I wasn't really like playing, but to just be there in a room with those like giants,
Yeah.
and everybody, like Peter was, when he came from behind the drum set, Peter is like, a very focused man. And, he said hi to me and, how are you and all of that. But he was like so focused on the music that, like he said hi and then he just did his thing and stayed in that focus. And I knew already, like, oh yeah, this is some really heavy shit that's happening, and everybody is, showing their A game. So that was really, really inspiring and really, really cool to see. And then 2 days later, I met up with John Clayton and Jeff Hamilton, and they were playing a Ray Brown tribute down in Newport Beach for one of those events that John McClure and Joe Rothman were putting together. And it was with Larry Fuller, and they just played Ray Brown arrangements for an hour and a half. And my foot was just jumping. Like I couldn't sit still for an hour and a half because they were swinging their asses off with all of those Ray Brown arrangements, and that happened all in that first week that I moved out to LA. So that was a lot of people back home were very jealous. I can tell you that.
It's funny. One time I sang with the Heath brothers.
Oh,
And
cool.
my experience was a little bit like that, like, I mean, this much of what you just experienced, but
Sure.
they were, it was something that I had never imagined. The
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
feeling, it was, otherworldly,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and I mean, we're so lucky to be able to experience those universes, you
Yeah,
know.
right.
And um, I mean, we can do it over and over again, but especially when you're live in the same space, the feeling is so amazing. And, um, I
Was
mean,
that with all three of them? Percy, Jimmy, and Tootie?
I think it was with two of them. It was a long
Okay.
time. I was very young. But I had sung jazz forever because my dad was a sax player, my mom was a singer, my two sisters and I sang growing up, and I was definitely into jazz for years. And when I came out, and I was gigging a lot, and I was a young jazz singer, um, but but that was just gorgeous. It was,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, but we're so lucky. We're so lucky. Hey,
Yeah.
let's listen to something. Um, so I am going to. Uh, so do 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 do. Um, so, um, well, this was wonderful. The Shelley Mann tribute. That was just incredible. We could listen to
Thank you.
that or anything else. What would you like to?
Oof. Yeah, we're going down the rabbit's hole, I guess, huh? I think music-wise, we could like scroll down maybe for like a minute because there's that was cool. The thing with Oatts and Mintzer. I think there's a nice tune that we played with Oatts and Mintzer at the Will, which is called Aha. You might be able to
Now,
that
do you
that
think
should
it's,
pop.
do you think I can put in aha here?
Yeah, it's just a yeah, exactly that. Yeah, there it is. That's a cool Mincer tune.
That was a pleasure listening to that. Wow. See, I wanted to stop after 5 minutes, but there was no way.
Yeah,
It was just, it was too good.
yeah. That's from a little while ago.
Yeah, definitely blue whale, and you looked really young.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can tell. I can tell. I can tell.
Not that you look old now, but that was
No,
you
no, no.
really looked young.
That was back in the day where I was like, shaving like, after 2 days, and now I'm just, like, "Ugh, I don't care.
That
I
was,
like the scruff.
yeah, that was really great. You know, well, the blue whale was so good for that, for just listening to really seriously great music. And I think I had seen the bass player before with another band, but she's great.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, Anna is incredible.
Yeah.
She plays a lot with Jeff Parker.
Oh, doesn't Jeff Parker play somewhere consistently that I forgot about?
He used to play consistently at ETA.
Yeah,
That was a bar in Highland Park,
yeah,
but ETA closed.
right.
And I think they're gonna do something at this place in Atwater Village called Zebulon. That's where Jeff
Oh,
Parker's
yeah.
is
Wait,
going.
Zebulon, is that the place that has the really big outdoor area
Yeah,
and then indoor, it's kind of you stand up?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Hmm, that's interesting. I gotta write that down,
yeah.
Zebulon. Um, yeah, I saw Bill Frisell there.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah, and of course, I think Atwater is where the blue whale is going to be next.
yeah, yeah. Were you there at the city council meeting that they did over Zoom?
I missed it. I think I was in Japan.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, I attended that meeting, and it was really nice to see like there I think there were like in between 100 and 150 people that showed up for June, and about 50 people spoke in favor of the project. So, and as you've probably seen as well from his post, that all of the permits have
Yeah.
been approved. So now it's just full system ahead, all systems go.
What's parking going to be like?
There's a lot next to it. The cool thing about the city council meeting was that they showed blueprints of what the venue is gonna look like, and the venue is pretty much an old scoring stage off
Oh,
of West Casitas Avenue, which is a side street of Glendale Boulevard. And they found an old scoring stage which has a parking lot right next door. And what they're going to do is they're going to make two rooms, for one room for classical music, one room for jazz music, and then a full restaurant and bar with it too, so that the age restriction will be, it won't be a 21 plus venue anymore.
that is so cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ambitious as hell, I can tell you.
I know. That's why it's taken a while to get together.
Yeah, probably.
He sounded, I'm sure Rocco and he, talked about it for a long time and
Hmm.
just made, I mean, the fact that it's a full restaurant, yeah, it's really great. Yep,
Yeah,
the blue whale. Did you know that June was my student?
I did not know that actually.
Yep. He went to MI to look for a teacher, and I had recently left MI as a teacher. It was after the Japanese guy came in, and he was that Japanese guy was too weird, and so I left MI, and June called me because they referred him to me, and the first time he came over, and I was like, okay, so do you sing jazz? And he said, not really. And I said, okay, well, let's hear, what do you know? All the things you are. Okay, so you don't sing jazz, but you know all the things you are. Okay, well, let's hear. He was great. I said,
Mhm.
do you scat? And he said, no, not really. And I was like, oh, really? Okay, well, let's see. Yeah,
Yeah,
he scat. I mean, he was young, and of course he developed, and but still, it was it was great. It was fun. He was adorable. At that time, all my women students were like sighed and oohed over June.
Mm.
was great. It was really great. And I remember when he called me up and he said, Kath, um, I'm starting a club. And I said, what? Because it was really kind of out of the blue. And he said, yeah, I'm starting a club. It's downtown and come by and check it out. And it was still being kind of put together. And oh man, he's so cool, man.
Yeah,
He's
that's the period that I missed because in 2015, I mean the club existed for about 10 years,
yeah,
give or take, and it closed in late 2020, so like 2010. So the club was already around like 5 years before I moved.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I've heard about the days, the starting days of the Blue Whale. Yeah,
yeah. We were there a lot. We were there a
yeah,
lot, like 4 days a week, maybe. I would
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would
Dan,
go there too.
Dan
Like
and I too.
who?
Dan.
Oh yeah, Nan.
Dan.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh yeah, he and I, and then Aviva, came in, and we would, and Dan and I would sit in the front row. We liked
Yeah,
it
yeah, 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 yeah.
because then you felt like part of the band.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I used to make it a point to go there when I moved out here, and I tried to get people to come along with me, but there was great music played pretty much every week. So I would go there at least once a week.
Yeah,
Most of the times, also like two times, pretty
yeah,
much to go check out something.
yeah. It was just I mean, it's amazing. I look forward to seeing what the new Blue Whale's going to be like.
Yeah, because it was the hang after the hang, pretty much. Like if you were, I've experienced so many times that there was this one date in particular that I was playing at. This was when they still had jazz at not the Americana, but the Grove,
Yeah,
and they did a jazz gig over there, and it would end early. It would end like around 8:30 or 9 or something like that. And I did that with Adam Hirsch, my buddy on piano. But it so happens to be that was around the time that Leonardo Amuedo, the great guitar player for Chris Bodie, who I know from Holland because he works with a singer who I work with as well, and I invited him to come, and he was like, yeah, yeah, you guys want me to sit in or something like that? And I said, sure, yeah, let's do it. And he ended up like just sitting in for the entire gig. So, I said to Leo, like, hey, you want to go to the Blue Whale because my friend Taryn Ray is playing there with her big band. So he said, sure, yeah, why not? So, we go into my car and we drive over there and we just hang there and like pretty much Leo, me, and the singer who was on that gig, Jamie Vandersloos, who's a great singer. We all went to hang with Taryn, and then there were a bunch of people there, and it's a big band, so obviously there are also people in that band who we know, and like we just stayed there until the wee small hours. So, but that's just that's the blue whale for the at least for the musician community is like when you're done with a gig, you can go over there and hang. So, you know,
gotta have places like that. You
yeah,
know. Yeah, and well, you didn't know Rocco's place before vibrato.
yeah.
Uh,
No, I didn't know that.
that was the only place in the city that had modern jazz.
Mm,
It was dedicated to modern stuff,
yeah,
and it was really cool. It was a nice size small bar. I mean, the restaurant was the restaurant, and then the bar, and it was nice. It was nice to play there, really comfortable, and nice to go listen. It was great.
yeah,
Rocco was and remains really cool.
yeah. I mean, what he does with Angel City Jazz Fest is great.
Last year I volunteered several times. It was
Oh yeah.
great. Yeah, it was wonderful. The one the all day concert that they did at Art Share,
Hmm.
amazing. It was so good. It was, every song would be a different group of people that they were just throwing together.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was great. I mean, wow, what an experience. I mean, if you try and tell normal people about that experience, I mean, of them playing and sounding, like they sound, I mean, normal people, sorry, normal people,
Yeah.
but normal people wouldn't, they wouldn't understand. It's
Yeah,
like, what do you mean? You're just throwing them together and they sound great? Yeah.
yeah. It is possible.
So, hi Nora. Um, yeah, so let's see. There's a few more Taylor questions.
Great.
He said he's going to go easy on you, but uh, well, he said, "What's the funniest moment that's ever happened to you on a gig? Do you recall?"
Funniest moment. Hmm. That's
Kind
also
of a hard
it's
question, isn't it? I'm
yeah,
trying to
yeah, yeah.
remember my funny things. I guess I could. I mean, not funny, haha, but funny kind of. Oh,
Yeah.
Jeremy Siskin said, I can think of some funny moments with Kevin on gigs.
Oh yeah. I would be very curious to hear from Jeremy specifically what he's thinking of.
He said, think about our recent gig.
Our recent gig. Uh, oh yes, 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 yes. Thank you for reminding me. So this was wild. This was so wild. So Jeremy and I play in this small big band from time to time with this jazz singer. His name is Jerry Costanzo. He's kind of like a crooner type of guy, and it's in downtown in one of those skyscrapers. It's all fancy, and it's this birthday party for I don't know even I can't I don't even know what I don't know if anybody knew what the guy did, but the guy had money. That's one thing for sure. And it was like really it was a little bit of an awkward vibe there because we started playing and people were kind of like ushered in by this MD to go in and start eating, but this MD was also like semi-aggressive in saying to the people that they have to go in now, and then there were a bunch of speeches, and then he was saying like you guys have to be quiet right now because there's going to be speeches. And Jeremy and I were looking at one another, and I'm like, this vibe is weird. So and finally they say like, okay, you guys can start playing. So we start playing. Band is great, and people are having dinner, and out of nowhere comes this individual who is covered in like a black, uh, like how would you call a suit like that? Like he was completely covered in black, but then the whole suit he was also on stilts because I could tell that he was like on these like high shoes or like risers that you put under your shoes that are strapped on, and the guy was covered in neolights. So it was like this black helmet that he was wearing, and it was covered in neolights, and the lights were flickering, and he was kind of like scaring the shit out of people too. And Jeremy sees this guy coming out of the hallway wherever he's at, and it might be a woman or it might be a guy, we don't know, this individual. And Jeremy and we just start laughing our balls off because it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And here we are playing like "Fly Me to the Moon," and here's this individual like sort of dancing and sort of scaring the shit out of people. And we were just laughing our asses off. And I had like literally like a hard time keeping time because Jeremy was just crying. He was crying. So that was that. I mean, and then when we stopped playing, we were like, "Well, this takes the cake." This is wild and weird and awkward. Also, at the same time, it was a whole thing.
That's funny.
Yeah, yeah,
I just saw Jeremy playing, but like a few days ago. But yeah, and he said, yeah, it was during a piano solo, he said.
yeah, yeah. Yes, yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. I
It's
mean,
very,
and but the besides that fact, like, I mean, I love Jeremy to death because he's just an insane musician, insane piano player, and I love the guy to death for for his musical identity and what he brings to the
yeah,
table. And we should play more, Jeremy. We haven't played enough together just yet, so.
he's brilliant. He said, I once had to wear a Hitler costume at a gig.
Oh, geez.
That was his funny story.
Wow.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I remember now that you guys are talking about crying, on the gig,
Yeah.
I had actually several times do you know the bass player Armando Campion?
No.
So he's more of a local guy. He's a great bass player,
Mhm.
plays electric and acoustic, and he sings his ass off. He's kind of a blues jazz singer. And he's too funny.
Mhm.
Actually, Chick Corea wrote a song about him called Armando's Eyes, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay, there you go.
But anyway, he's made me cry on the gigs, and this one gig we were doing, it was a wedding, and the guitar player, Rick Vitalo, he was really good, really smart, great leader, good temperament, and on every I don't know if this happens where you're from, but here, on every bar mitzvah, there's this period of time where they're lighting the candles and they
Mhm.
bring up all the aunts and uncles from everywhere in the country who have come to visit.
Right, right.
And when they come up, they'll play a song, that's kind of fits
Yeah,
Uncle Harry and Aunt Selma.
yeah.
And the father on this gig only wanted the UCLA fight song. And so we were on stage and we were playing the UCLA fight song. And then Rick, the guitar player, started changing keys whenever he
Yeah.
wanted to. And Armando was sitting down and playing and electric. And pretty soon Armando started doing this because he was crying from laughing. And we were all just like crying, laughing,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
God. So that's pretty funny. And, I mean,
Yeah,
there are other things where I ended up crying, laughing on gigs,
yeah,
and that's pretty funny. But I never really think about that unless we happen to be talking about it, which is,
yeah. Well, Nick Mancini also, he always accomplishes at least once on a gig to get a good chuckle out of me. That's one, but he's just, he's doing it because he wants to do it. He can't help himself.
he certainly
Sorry,
can.
Nick, if you're watching, I just have to tell you the truth.
Uh, okay, let's see. Can you name any West Coast jazz records that you think people are sleeping on and not listening to enough or
Oh,
underrated? You know what? My husband has something like 10,000 albums, and I mean, I have about 200 of those, not many. But so somewhere I think I got several from his collection because he's not super into jazz, he's more into rock and roll.
yeah.
And but I got this record, so I keep trying to listen to the records to see do I like them still? Do I want to keep them? Because I'm in a throw out mood, which is great. And yesterday I heard this swinging piano player named Barbara Carroll. Did you ever
Mm,
hear of her?
nope.
Me neither. And the trio, never heard of the trio, but apparently she made a mark, and people like Leonard Feather loved her, and she was modern for the time. It was probably I think the record was made in the late 50s, and I mean her playing was kind of reminiscent of, Tatum and all those guys, but there was like this real modern edge to it. She was
Yeah.
really good. And I looked her up, and as it turned out, she stopped playing for a little while, then came back. Then she ended up playing with uh, Chris Christopherson
Ah,
and
Chris Christopherson. Yeah.
who was his wife, or the singer, the girl singer woman singer who, Rita Coolidge.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, weird. That's a weird, like, kind of
Yeah, it's a
swing
weird transition.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, do you feel like there's records or people that are kind of underrated, or people aren't?
Oh, here on the West Coast, so many people are overlooked. I mean, that's the beautiful thing that Josh Nelson and I have undertaken, for the interview series that we have, is that especially during the pandemic when we were doing it once a week, we asked the people that we interviewed for, the music that, they want to show or that they want to talk about, and there were so many records mentioned to us that we started listening to and that we were sleeping on at the time. Uh, my desert island record from the West Coast is Shelly Manne playing My Fair Lady with the unoriginal cast, and uh, people will say like, oh yeah, Shelly Manne, My Fair Lady with Andre Previn, and that's either Red Mitchell or Leroy Vinegar. I'm spacing on that right now, but that's a trio record. But Shelly Manne, My Fair Lady with the unoriginal cast is Shelly's quintet with an added big band horn section to it, with Jack Sheldon singing, not playing trumpet, but just singing, and Irene Krall singing on it too. And
Wow,
the arrangements were made by John Williams.
I gotta write that down. I want
Yeah,
to hear Shelley and with the unoriginal.
yeah, My Fair Lady with the unoriginal cast, and it's just a masterpiece from start to finish.
Oh,
Absolutely insane. And um, Josh and I are actually very lucky that we're going to perform that suite next year, January, with our big band at the Irvine Barclay Theater.
wow.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I might have to travel down there. I hate
Yeah,
going down there. It's so friggin' far from here,
it's
but
it's far,
oh,
but
I want to do that.
that theater has a jazz series like every season, and they don't joke around with their lineup, because besides our band that they have lined up, and the project that we're doing is the biggest project that we have undertaken so far, because the My Fair Lady suite is only worth like 45 minutes of music. So, we had to come up with another idea to do two sets. And we spoke with the president of the theater, and he said, like, well, why don't we make it into kind of like a Broadway and jazz type of concert? So the first set is going to be Gil Evans's Porgy and Bess that was performed with Miles. And we're bringing out Gilbert Castellanos from San Diego to be the trumpet soloist for that. And then the second half will be Shelley's My Fair Lady suite, and we'll actually have Benny Benek III playing trumpet and singing. So he'll be the trumpet soloist and taking Jack Sheldon's role. And then Leah Booth is taking the role of Irene Krall. And then we'll have Nicole McCabe as alto saxophone soloist as well, because it's a quintet plus, big band horn section and two voices. So that's and then that also has like added tuba, and we have to get a couple French horn players for that too, because there's some of that stuff in there as well. So yeah, that's by far the biggest undertaking that we're preparing right now for January.
That sounds great.
Yeah, yeah, that's going to be, it's an ambitious project.
Huge, yeah. I mean, you're gonna have to work a lot on that one.
Oh, trust me, I'm working on it already. That the Taylor wanted to know what I'm shedding. That's what I'm shedding. That's sweet.
It's incredible. You know, Irene, when I worked at Dante's, I saw Irene Krall, and which was funny because people told me, especially during that time, that I sounded like her. I didn't know who she was. I had never listened to her.
Yeah.
And she was actually dying at the time. She had cancer. She was
Mhm.
singing with Alan Broadbent, and I knew that she was sick. And this always kind of makes me feel better about people not showing up to my gig. The only two people in the audience were Carmen McRae and Sarah Vaughan.
Oh,
And
for
I
your
was
gig?
waiting. No, this was Irene's gig.
Oh, Irene's gig. Woof.
Irene and Alan Broadbent. And I was
Ah,
the waitress. I was 21 or something, and I was like,
that's cool.
Carmen and Sarah,
Yeah, yeah.
and then, and that's the first time I heard, which absolutely, killed me, was Some Other Time. That
Mm-hmm.
really is a good, it's a reflective song of, like, you're leaving the planet.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so, yeah, that was amazing. Irene Krall, just, you know, what a great phraser, and
She made a record with Junior Mance's trio with Mickey Roker on drums, and I think it's Bob Crenshaw on
yeah.
bass. That's really good. And then Irene was also featured on. Uh, she made a big band record as well with arrangements by who is it? I'm looking it up also right now because I have it handy right here. Uh, the trio record is called Play Crawl, but she also made a large ensemble record, and I'm just maybe it's Hank Jones who
Hmm.
made the arrangements,
Uh-huh.
but I can look that up real quickly. But speaking of Alan Broadbent, who you just mentioned, Alan played with the WDR big band actually a couple weeks ago. That he arranged the whole like Miles program,
Hmm.
Birth of the Cool and Kind of Blue program for the WDR, and it's just incredible. He plays on a couple tunes, but he wrote all of the arrangements for the concert, and I'm like, damn, Alan Broadbent is like my new favorite arranger for a big band because he's a bad dude. And regarding obscure records, Shelley made two records that are double piano quartet albums. So it's Alan Broadbent and then Bill Mays on pianos,
Yeah.
Chuck DeMonico on bass, and Shelley. And it was recorded live at Carmelo's, and they made two volumes out of that. They just play tunes, and they play a couple originals by Billy Mays and by Bill Mays, I should say, and Alan. But it's really cool to listen to those albums. Josh hit me to volume one, and then I figured and I discovered that there was a volume two. So I told him like, hey, do you know that there's a volume two of this stuff?
Cool. That was a cool club, by the way, Carmelo's.
Yeah. So I've heard. Also
Yeah.
way before I moved out here. Yeah.
Yeah. Owned by a drummer, Chuck Piscatello. Yep. That was a great club. Um, yeah, wow, that's really interesting. And the WDR, you can just go online and hear it, or how
Yeah.
did you hear it?
Yeah. They just posted it on YouTube actually.
Cool. WDR, Alan Broadbent. This is why I have huge amounts of lists. Because I write down things. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's another thing to check out. Oh my God.
Yeah. That large ensemble record that Irene Krall made is called Wonderful Life.
Wonderful Life. Okay.
Yeah, and it has all kinds of LA guys in it, like Gene Cipriano plays on it, Hal Blaine, Chuck Berghofer, and the record with Junior Mance's trio is Better Than Anything.
Yeah, I think I've heard that one.
Yeah, yeah. But
Um,
she sounds phenomenal.
yeah, she was great. Um, yeah, was really beautiful. You know who I interviewed last week or the week before? A Korean arranger, composer and arranger who's so good. You ought to check her out if you don't know her. Ji Lee.
Okay.
She is frigging so musical. She writes for, you know, I don't know whether to call it big band or orchestra. It's just like her writing is so musical, so beautiful. She is Korean. She went to Berkeley.
Mm,
She's kind of a genius, you know. She went to Berkeley with not much background. She was a singer-songwriter. That was it.
hmm
And she heard somebody rehearsing a big band. She went in for 2 hours and listened, and she was blown away. And then I think it was after her first year of being in the jazz program, she won the Duke Ellington Award.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, and so, and then it's really beautiful. I'll, uh, I'll just pop you over a email or something with her name. Just
Yeah.
really, yeah, just gorgeous, Kevin, and a really nice person, you know, just quality, you know. Let's see, am I spelling that right? Lee, something like that. You know, probably didn't spell it right. Jihye, no, Jihye.
hmm
Really good. You'd like her. You'd like to listen.
Yeah. I'm always down to check out new stuff. That's one thing for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I've listened to big band for all my life because my dad was a big band guy, you know. And so, yeah, it's nice. It's really good to hear refreshing arrangements, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Which like if which I'm also in the search for, and the big band scene out here in LA is thriving. Like there's so many uh, people of my age and younger who are writing for big bands now, and uh, you know uh, um, and putting their own bands together. Like my friend Paul Nelson, who is a bass trombone player, he plays oftentimes bass trombone in the West Coast Jazz Hour big bands, and he's been playing with Dave Slonaker's big band also pretty steadily. And I sub in Dave's big band whenever Peter can't make it. So that's really fun, really great charts, really great original compositions that Dave writes.
yeah.
But Paul started writing too, and Paul is planning on recording an album with the band in October. So that should be really fun, and it's really different, and it's a mixture of like different type of styles, and it goes a little bit more into a modern vibe, but really cool. And then there's Tim McKay, who is a good friend of mine. He's a baritone saxophone player, really inspired by the music of Thad, but he played in Mike Barone's band also for a number of years and was really inspired by Mike's writing, and has, worked out a couple of or recopied a couple charts that Mike wrote. Um, and he writes really great arrangements too. A little bit more onto the swinging side of things, but really really nice. And then there's
Martinez, he's
Marlon. Marlon is, I mean, I love Marlon, and what that guy does is, I mean, he should get a medal for that stuff that he's doing, because not only is he responsible of, creating a band that's actually a working band in this town, and there aren't that many working big bands in this town besides, like, I would consider the band of Josh and I a working band, Marlon's band, Bernie Dressel, and then Dave also like works, like on a semi-steady basis in LA. But
Just
Marlon,
traveling too.
yeah, Strat started playing again. Yeah, that's right. He started playing this year again, and released his record. You're completely right about that. With amazing music too. But what Marlon is doing, and advocating for Billy Strayhorn's music is really something that is very inspiring to see. And the music that he writes that's based off of Billy Strayhorn and the story of Audrey Hepburn is really cool how he does that. And that band sounds, freaking swinging and great. And we've been meaning to get together for like a little big band hang / lunch together, but he's busy and I'm busy, so that it hasn't happened just yet. But we will do that.
I like him a lot. I've interviewed him. He's really good, and I've enjoyed listening to his music. He's really a
Yeah,
good singer, and he's a good player,
I mean, he can play the living daylights out of that bass. I've done a couple gigs with him, and I'm like, damn, man, you sound killing. Like you can play the freaking bass. You write. You lead the big band. Like, do you sleep?
And he's a teacher, right?
And a good teacher also.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really good educator.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. The ability that there's a number of people who do that, but the ability to do all that,
Hmm.
right? It's challenging, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to tap into like all different kinds of skills
Yeah.
for that stuff, because playing a gig is something that's completely playing a gig as a sideman is very different than playing a gig as a band leader. So like, and especially with the big band, like you have to get all of the people at the same place at the right time. You have to rehearse. You have to make sure that the charts are in order and all that kind of stuff. And then the educational thing, when you're talking with and working with students, that's a completely different vibe, because you're not working together with fellow musicians, but you're working with students who are trying to get their act together pretty much.
Yeah.
So and then it's also, and I rely a lot on my own personal experiences with teachers, and I just got spoiled to death with an educator like Peter Erskine, because I mean, beside the fact that he's one of the greatest drummers of all time, he's an insanely good educator who, like, took me under his wing for 2 years that I was at USC. And then when I graduated USC, I was kind of like, okay, I feel ready to go out there in the big wide open world, and go start doing my thing. And I talk with Peter from time to time, and he always drops like little tidbits of knowledge on me. But his way of educating, and John Clayton's way of educating, and Jeff Hamilton's way of educating has really like informed me in my way of education, which is kicking the butts of students, but from a positive perspective. That's not to say that I won't be strict, or that I don't refrain from being strict with my students, because if they don't get their shit together, excuse my Dutch, but if they don't get their shit together, then I will tell them what it's about. But they start from the perspective, from saying like, this is good, do this to make it better. Not saying like, oh, this is bad, or this is bad, or this is bad, or whatnot. But they start with saying like, this is what you're doing right, this is what you're doing right, this is what you're doing right, but these are the things that you have to do to make the things that are going good, to make them better, and these are the other things that you have to work on, just because they're not really at the level where they should be. So it starts from a foundation of positivity, which is really good.
Yeah.
But I got my ass kicked by Peter number of times. That he said like, "Hey, bro, you got to get this together, because this is not working for you." And I'm like, "Yep, yep, understood. I'm gonna go back to the practice room." But I think and I don't really. I teach at the Orange County High School for the Arts, which is a really terrific place. It's a really special place with great students. And it's kind of like a luxury problem that we have over there because our department has grown because this coming semester we will have, I believe, 3 full big bands with kids. So I believe that our program is about between 80 and 100 students strong, which is a lot for a jazz program. And all those kids want to swing. All those kids are just hungry for knowledge, and they're not scared of getting their butts kicked. There's this stigma and premise happening around, like, colleges where I've spoken with peers of mine and also older musicians who say, like, we can't say anything to these students anymore because as soon as their butt hurt, they're going to go over to HR and they're going to say, like, oh, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so is treating me badly, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing of the sorts happening at OSHA, because those kids are there because they want to become better at their craft, at their instrument.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you have to give them a harsh lesson, but it's all from this perspective of, from love, and to have them succeed after they leave the high school. And that's a high school. That's not even, a college or whatever. And, the top big band from the Orange County, from OSHA, as we call it, from OSHA,
Yeah.
has participated at essentially Ellington now for the last 4 years in a row, and was in the top 5 every year. So, I mean, that says something about the quality of the students, and, the fact that they want to learn, and that they're not shy of getting their asses kicked from time to time, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, that's kind of why I left the school system. I taught at Cal State Long Beach and Cal State LA for like 7 years, and MI, and I just didn't dig, kind of the administrative restrictions and rules, and it's not in my bones.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and also about the teaching. I was just talking about it with a friend of mine, an old singer friend of mine, and we were talking about, you know, the students that we love to teach. I mean, I teach all levels, but it's just so great when the person shows up and they're on the same page and they're waiting and they want to be committed. What could be better? It
Yeah.
feels so good to,
Yeah.
communicate with a person like that and see that it's
Yeah.
actually making changes. It's great.
Yeah.
I really like teaching. We were also talking about workshops. I don't know if it's the same with all instruments, but for singer workshops, at least in my home workshops that I've done for years. So I would rather see many times, I would rather see the students singing, with the players, who are always great players that I get, but they're singing and, they're getting comfortable. I would almost rather see that than go hear people on gigs
Hmm.
because there's something incredibly rewarding about it and beautiful. It's just like, because you really see the power of music,
Yeah.
it's just a beautiful thing. And I have a comment from Graham Moses referring back to Jack Sheldon on his Vegas gig. He was just following the chart. He was that funny. Jack was Lenny Bruce's best friend. That's right.
Mhm.
And he's highly featured in his autobiography. Jack and Chet Baker used to travel around as a duo through California, and they were very close. When Chet was asked about a drummer, Chet responded, "It's hard to find a drummer that's better than no drummer."
Uh,
Kevin is a great drummer and a great person.
well, I know Graham. I've met Graham I believe I've met Graham at Vibrato once with his wife. I can't remember exactly like what the group was that I was playing with over there, but I've met Graham there once, and his wife is Kai Winding's daughter. So Kai Winding was this great trombone player from back in the day, one of the greatest, and we were talking about that for a little while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's totally right. And Terry talks about one time, Terry Gibbs talks about a time that he was hanging with Jack and Lenny Bruce together, and they went to this amateur hour, like, free improv comedy type of thing. And all three of them went up on stage apparently at the same time, and they were just cracking jokes, but with every swear word that you could think of. They were just calling each other like the most horrendous things. And back in those days, that was like not done because, that's why Lenny Bruce got arrested many, many times because he was just using like very vulgar language for that day and age, which now is just, everybody does that. But Terry said like, yeah, they were just coming up with like all cuss words that you could imagine, and they had to get off stage really quickly and get out of that place wherever they were because they would get arrested themselves.
Jeez. That would have been amazing to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's been 2 hours.
Flew by.
I know, doesn't it? It's really
Yeah,
cool.
time flies when you're having fun.
I know. It's been really fun to talk. I'm sure we could talk a lot longer. By the way, you were number 584.
Yes.
You got to play lotto on those numbers.
Yeah.
Speaking of history, next Monday, I'm having an old friend of mine who used to live here, and he had a club and a school, Les DeMerle.
Oh yeah, Les DeMerle. Yeah.
So I'm having him on again because he lives in Florida. He's lived there for a long time, and he's got a jazz cruise going, and it's the second year that it's going.
Wow.
He does a lot of festival kind of stuff. You can't push him down, man. He's just like a powerhouse. So he's
Yeah.
gonna be on next Monday.
Oh yeah.
But
As a club owner, he should have tons of stories.
oh, he's so much fun to talk to. Got a great heart, and
Isn't he also a drummer by
he's a
trade?
drummer. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
friggin' great drummer. In fact, he sent me this new release. So this is
Okay.
1967.
An
It's called
origin. Nice.
Once in a Lifetime, and previously unissued. I guess this was his first recording. Randy Brecker, Alan Govin, I don't know, Danny Sandridge, Terry Plumeri, and Les, and Lanny Morgan,
Mm.
Jack Gregg, Rosemary Clooney. Yeah. So anyway, I haven't heard it yet, but I'm looking forward to hearing that. It should be
Yeah,
fun.
that should be good.
Yeah. Okay, well, KEVIN VAN DEN ELZEN.
That's the second time that you said it, and you said it right both times.
I'm practicing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being on. It's been really fun. And yeah, I look forward to hearing you again live, and especially when is that date in Orange County?
Yeah, I can look that up really quickly for you.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, as long as I have you captive, I'm just going to say I'm releasing my 16th record in August called Social Anthems Volume 2, which is, I have to say, it's a pretty cool record. And I did a version of Marvin Gaye's Inner City Blues on it that's very funky. It's great. It's Steve
Oh,
Hodges.
nice.
And my engineer did a remix, like a dance cut, and it's so frigging cool. I'm sending it to Europe, and I don't know, you never know. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
be the next soul jazz dance artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be something.
Yeah.
Okay, so when is your date?
Saturday, January 18th.
Oh, it's not that far.
No. Yeah,
No
that
wonder you're starting. I thought it might be like in the summer or something.
no, it's early next year, yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm
That's
writing
that's
it
gonna be
down.
good. I I have a couple singles coming out with the two tenor quartet that I play with Salazano on tenor, and Brian Clancy on tenor, and Eric Sittner on bass, and then myself on drums. And we're releasing over the next couple of weeks 4 singles. The first one is now out on Bandcamp.
Oh, cool.
Um,
And
yeah,
whose name is it under?
under Sal's.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on Sal's Bandcamp, and it's the first track that's published right now is his original called "Are You Looking for Me?" And we'll have 3 more singles released in the next coming weeks, and then we're going back into the studio in late August, and then we'll have a full record to release at the end of this year. So
What's his last name? Lozano?
Al Lozano,
Al?
Lozano, Lozano.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Lozano. Okay. All right. Cool. Great. All right. Excelente.
Sí, muy bien.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Have a great day.